back. She never looks back. Looks back. Demons are crawling back to your bed, and they're calling out your name. Demons are crawling back to your bed. Demons are crawling back to your bed, and they're calling out your name. Demons are crawling back to your Demons are crawling back to your bed, and they calling out your name. Demons are crawling back to your bed. Demons are crawling back to your bed, and they calling out your name. Demons are crawling back to your bed.
Night Dreams Talk Radio, After Dark, wants to give a big shout out to all the truckers that listen to our show.
And without you truckers, we wouldn't be here. And I'm going to say you guys do a job that a lot of people could not handle. Driving all those hours and heavy traffic and everything to deliver the goods across our nation. Anyway, we're back with Earl Grey, James Krischbaum, and myself, Gary Anderson on Night Dreams Talk Radio. We're down to the last half an hour of the show. We have Earl for the next 15 minutes. Do you have any other reports you want to share, or anything you want to share to all the listeners of the show?
Sure. Well, first of all, just a shout out to the truckers. You guys are moving sometimes out in the middle of nowhere at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and that's when people see UFOs. So I'm guessing a lot of you see stuff. I have one case here that I closed a year ago, almost a year ago to the date, that I closed as unknown. It's MUFON case number 94629. And this happened out near Lemoore Air Force Base. Just reading the synopsis to you, it says, I'm just reading from the report. The witness and his two friends were out in the country on Highway 41 outside of Fresno, California on 12/9/2000, less than a mile from Lemoore Naval Air Station. The main witness states that as he went to ash his cigarette, he noticed a steady white light hovering over and above his car. He and his two friends looked out the side windows of the car and noticed a matte black hovering pie wedge-shaped object hovering over the car that was eerily silent with no visible means of propulsion. He and his friends didn't exit the car out of trepidation, but they remained in the car, and they watched the object floating silently above themselves for over 20 minutes. The object moved with a blunt edge pointed forward, the tip of the triangle and back. When the object finally accelerated away from the witnesses, he states that it left a tracer image of itself, that you could still see it like the wake of a ship in the ocean. And this is an effect that I've seen multiple times with multiple cases. I think this is actually something that I've discovered about UFOs, that, you know, when they're hovering over you and you're watching them, and when they leave, they'll leave a trail or a trace or image of themselves. I had another case that happened out in Venice, California, back in the early 1960s, where this guy went on record finally and talked about his sighting. And he was directly under this UFO that was sort of stingray shaped, and he watched it take off, and it left a trace or image of itself as it took off. The only time that I ever hear that is when the person is like within 30, 35 feet of a UFO right under it. The witness and his friends were out for the evening, driving in the country. The witness states that they were sober and not using any sort of drugs, had not been drinking at the time, which, I mean, you know, I just had a couple of beers, and I've not seen UFOs, right? And I don't think that anybody else sees UFOs because they had a couple of beers. He said, we may have had a couple of beers much earlier in the evening. The elevation of this vehicle was 180 degrees directly overhead, approximately 20 feet above the vehicle. It was the size of a school bus, 25 to 35 feet long, 10 feet wide. The object was headed south, and then it turned abruptly, accelerated in a southeasterly direction. Of course, the local airport military base was Lemoore Naval Air Station. There weren't any trace evidences left. You know, the car didn't have burns, or, you know, there was no radiation burns that were described by the witnesses. Sometimes you do get radiation burns and stuff from witnesses, blotches on their skin and stuff like that. This was the interview that I did with the witness. This is just verbatim what I recorded and later notated on the report. The object was black, but with almost a gray tinge to its color. The surface underneath was perfectly smooth, almost molded looking. It had a square and square design to the sides, but the design didn't seem to go very deep, maybe only an inch or a couple of inches deep. I'm not sure if it was just a stylized design or if it had some purpose. There was a lighter color variation to the square and square design, the raised areas being darker and the indents being lighter for some reason. And the guy drew a picture of this, and you could see what he meant. You know, there were like indentations in the side of this pie wedge that traveled blunt end forward, the pointy end backwards. And we see that with like the TR, you know, the TR-3B reports that we get, the triangular crafts. They usually travel blunt end first with a pointy end and back. The molding went around the sides, but the bottom was smooth and flat. From looking up, the object was about the size of a small semi-truck or a school bus. When the object began to accelerate from us, it had a distinct low hum, about the volume of an electric car starting up, except maybe just a little louder. The object as a whole was pie wedge shaped. Which freaked us out more than anything for some reason was that when it left, the pointy area was like the tail of a craft, and it moved blunt side forward, not remotely aerodynamically. It flew in reverse, insanely fast. I could almost count from the power up which we heard, which took about 90 seconds. Then it took off suddenly and silently, and it flew towards Fresno. It was gone in less than 2 seconds. I've never seen anything move that fast in my life. It was disturbing, as things just don't move fast like that. The object had no windows or any surface features except for the bevel design on the sides. We wondered, my friends and I, whether there might have been more features on top of the thing, but we never saw the top. It didn't have a raised area up there that we could see from our vantage point. When the object left, it left what I would call a tracer image of itself, which had a white glow. It hung there for a while in the air. It looked exactly the shape of what had been hanging over us only a moment before, but it was like a bioluminescent glow that you'll sometimes see in the wake of a ship, but glowing there in the air. Now that was a good UFO report, and that one absolutely got an unknown disposition from MUFON from me. I spoke with a witness. I spoke with one of the friends. The two other friends, I guess they had lost track of, but there were two people that their reports were identical, other than just little details that people will notice on their own that somebody else might not have noticed. I mean, for the main witness, what he noticed was that bioluminescent track that it left in the air when it took off.
Interesting.
It was just, as far as I'm concerned, that's one of the best UFO, just straight-on UFO sightings that I've had as a MUFON field investigator.
Now, have you had any of these, when you take a report, you go home and you sit in the chair and kind of go in a daze and just try to figure it out?
I'll compare it to other cases I've had. And I've had a few cases that are so similar that are unrelated, that happened, decades earlier than this sighting. And, I had one that was just very recent that a police officer reported to us. And he was kind of reticent and shy to talk about his story. But he was in Bakersfield, and he saw a black triangular UFO hovering over his neighbor's house. He happens to live at the end of the Bakersfield Airport runway. And he was out taking his dogs out to do their business at midnight. And he saw this thing, and his description of his triangular craft is very similar to this one, that he could see beveled areas. He said that it looked like air intakes or something on the sides, and it looked manufactured. So I wonder if the triangular UFOs are ours. I mean, they might be, because they all have such similar descriptions. And people describe seeing air intake vents or something on the side, and then you'll have those three red lights that people see. And this police officer, and I know he is what he is because, I Skyped with him and I had him redact his badge but show it to me, so that, because I don't want to have his badge number and stuff like that, because I shouldn't have that. But he was who he said he was. And, he saw this strange flat black object hovering there. He watched for about 3 minutes. It hung there with no visible means of propulsion. And as far as we know, humans haven't figured out how to defy gravity. But this thing that seemed manufactured, he could see the three lights underneath, but they weren't lit. But he could see them on each edge, like a little round half sphere shape on each corner of this craft. And it hung there. It had like a low hum that you could hear. And he ran inside to get his iPhone to take a photograph. And, of course, he came back out, and it was gone.
That's what happens. I had a law enforcement officer in one of the biggest towns in Oregon, or cities, I should say. I'm not going to say which one it is. I don't want to get him in trouble. But he was close to retire. He had 30 years, or has 30 years, in the police department. He claims last year him and his wife was up in Tillamook, Oregon, and they were going camping, and they were on some back road, and he saw, two aliens. And when he told his wife, hey, look at that, they went, poof, they were gone, just like that. So, and very credible. He was going to come on the show, but then he started thinking if he came on the show, somebody's going to recognize him, and he'll be, so he, last minute. But I checked him out. He was who he said he was, because I talked to him, through actually the police department's phone. So I knew the guy was real.
I mean, you have to listen. I mean, police officers and military guys, and, you have to listen to them, because there's none of them want their names on the report. That's the other thing. They all want to be anonymous. What's in it for them to report this stuff? And why do these sightings all sound so similar? I mean, they're just, it's like cookie cutter almost. And you have to